What is up, everybody? It's your boy Duty back again with another video, and this time we're taking a look at our boy DSP's business finances for 2023. And I figured let's put together a video and do a closeout for the year, do essentially a financial review of how the business fared in 2023 and compare it to 2022. Now, our boy Phil loves to constantly quote how even though his views are down, even though his memberships, pretty much everything across the board is down, which it's factually accurate and we can see the numbers, Phil claimed that his revenue or his income didn't change. Essentially, he's making the same amount of money that he made in previous years. And that's, of course, false. Let's put a big X doubt for that. And I just wanted to show you guys some information, some numbers. You guys know that I've been tracking it this year and kind of doing a compare year over year because I wanted to see how the business, the health of the business, and the best way to always do that is to compare numbers from current year to previous year and see how Phil is faring. And I'm gonna have to do a quick little spoiler here. It's not good news for Phil. Is it true that Phil made the same amount of money he made in 2022 compared, 2023 to compared to 2022? Was that factually correct? The answer is no, and by large amounts. Now, of course, this is all contingent on if Phil is being honest. So we have to say that Phil is actually reporting out all of the tips. There's no secret tips behind the scenes during, at night or whatever that he hasn't told anyone about. If he has a pay pig or a whale that wants to be anonymous and Phil is just not shouting that out, we have to make the assumption that Phil is being honest with us when he receives tips and so on. So I'm just putting that out there. The only way I can see Phil earning the same amount of money that he earned in 2022 is if he had a couple whales on the behind the scenes, a couple 1 minute mans tipping him and he just wasn't announcing it on stream. That is the only way, and it would have to be significantly large numbers, because I'm gonna go through this real quick. I'm gonna compare what he did this last business week compared to the previous week, and then we're gonna look at the yearly numbers, and then I also have numbers for views, which we can do a raw calculation on what he made roughly with ad revenue. And then I also taken a look at his Patreon. Now the memberships are a little tough because they don't have all that data. So I'm just gonna assume that the memberships were on par to what he made last year. So 2022 compared to 2023 memberships, I'm gonna say it's a wash. So whatever he earned for that, I'm gonna say he either made the same amount or a little less or a little bit more, but it's not going to alter the information that I'm going to provide here. Like the stark difference in income from the information that I have, there's no way that Phil can make that up. So just putting that out there as a disclaimer. So of course you guys know that the work week started on December 29th and went through January 3rd, 2024. Now it looks like Phil managed to pull in for tips, he pulled in $1,239. That same period the previous week, he pulled in $956. Now, mind you, let's not forget one of those days was the the Christmas marathon, where he pulled in $421. So he did make a little bit more money this work week than he did the previous week, and that's mainly due to Baldur's Gate, and also he had a pretty good night on New Year's Eve. Apparently the dents felt a little generous and threw some cash his way. Yeah, he did pretty good for tips. I mean, he made more in tips this week than he's made in a very long time. So I'm going to say that that's mainly due to the dents feeling generous and throwing cash his way. Now for super chats, Phil managed to only pull in $265 compared to $191. Now that's the one thing that I've really noticed in December is a significant dip in super chats. And again, it all goes to my theory that the money, there is no increase in money. It's just money being shifted around. If tips are high, then super chats are going to be low. If super chats are high, then tips are going to be low. If both tips and super chats are low, then memberships, get a bump. It's just, again, it's robbing Peter to pay Paul in Phil's circle. So if we look at the grand total for the work week, Phil managed to make $1,504. So that's actually a little bit better than he's made in a while. So I'm going to attribute that mainly to the fact that it was the holidays and people felt generous. So Phil made a pretty decent amount of money last work week. So no ham sandwiches for this week. Now, you compare that to last week where he made $1,147. Now you can say, well, he only worked 5 days. And that's why. But still, the amount is pretty significant. And then mind you, you have to look that he did have that Christmas marathon where he managed to pull in $421, which again is pretty pathetic because if you compare what he made the previous Christmas, I think the previous Christmas he made over $600, almost $700. So again, year over year, all of these big marathons, these special parties that Phil gonna throw, they just haven't panned out for Phil at all this year. And that is the main attributor to the decrease in his income. Now, the interesting thing is that he's done way more this year than he's done last year. I mean, he was averaging roughly about two marathons a month or special events. When usually he did one. He did one, and then occasionally he'll skip it if he didn't meet the member goal, which happened a few times in 2022. So yeah, so those are the numbers for the work week. It looks like Phil managed to do pretty good. And he'll be able to take his horse out to eat with no problems. Probably an expensive Thai restaurant or something. Now, real quick, I wanted to look at the total numbers for the month. So for December, Phil managed to pull $5,595 compared to $5,057 the previous month. So he did get a bump in the hardcore gaming season, but again, it's way less than what he made the previous year. The previous year in 2022 for October, November, December, Phil was pulling in $6,000 to $7,000 a month. And as you can see here, it was just difficult. It took extra begging for Phil to manage to get over 5K in tips and super chats. Now that's tips and super chats, don't forget. But he did all right for December. I mean, he had a little bit of extra cash to buy his creatures some Christmas presents, whatever that may be. Okay, so now this is what you guys really wanted to see. You guys really wanted to see the end totals for the year. So, as you can see from this chart, from this information, I'm looking at the total amount for 2023 and then comparing that to 2022 of last year. And if we go down here and scroll down, you can see that our boy Phil did not have a good year. For him, I mean, for most people, this is a pretty decent living. I mean, you look at $73,000, playing video games. For most Americans, for most humans, that's actually a pretty decent living. And let's not forget that on average in America, the average income per person is $50,000 a year. That's the average income. So Phil's well above that. And again, this is just super chats and tips. We're not looking at ad revenue, Patreon, memberships. That's not in these totals. So when Phil cries poor mouth, take it with a grain of salt. So as you can see here excuse me, let me highlight this so you can see this a little bit better. So as you can see here, for 2023, our boy Phil managed to pull in $52,459 in tips, compared to last year where he managed to pull in $65,336 for a net decrease again of 20%. That 20% amount fluctuated a little bit up and down, but it ended at 20%. 20% is significant drop. I mean, we're talking about $14,000 in income that Phil does not have. That's $14,000 in tips that he didn't have to spend on WWE champions and Jin, which is, pretty devastating for our boy Phil. And we know that it doesn't matter, he's gonna just take the YouTube money and spend it on Scopely. But could you imagine the totals of WWE champions this year if he would have had the additional $14,000? Oh my lord. So I know our boy Phil is hurting. So right there alone, it's 20%, a 20% decrease year over year in tips, which is huge. So he's already down net $14,000. For super chats, Phil managed to finally pull in $21,189 compared to last year where he pulled in $25,689. for a net decrease of 18%. So we're talking about $4,000, about $4,500. So right there alone, we're near 20K. We're near $20,000 in revenue that Phil did not have this year. That's a negative. And mind you, this man doesn't work. He doesn't have a real job, so he can't supplement his income. This is it. This is all he gets. He doesn't have sponsorships because no one will touch him. This is what he's getting. And again, this is his main source of income, super chats and tips. We all know it. We see it. Even with memberships and so on, the bread and butter for Phil is tips and super chats. So if we take a look at the total and compare it, it looks like Phil managed to not lose, but he made 19% less in 2023 compared to 2022. That's a net decrease of almost $20,000. It's about $19,000, close to $19,000 that Phil lost year over year. Now, I'm not sure where he's making that up. And let's not forget, folks, again, this is both DSP Gaming and DSP Reacts. So he created a brand new channel and yet still managed to lose money. Only Phil would manage to do that. He would be the only person that would fuck up a brand new channel and actually make less money. I don't get it. Okay, so we know he's down roughly about 19, let's just say 19K. And again, these are rough numbers. So he's down $19,000. I'm gonna put that right there, 19,000. And that's super chat and tips year over year. I went back and I took a look at his total views for DSP Gaming and DSP Reacts. So total views for 2023, Phil pulled in 6.6 million views for DSP Gaming. And then for DSP Reacts, he pulled in 704,000 views for a total of roughly 7.3 million views. So that's what Phil pulled in for both channels. Now, for comparison's sakes, I pull in about 1.4 million views a month. And I roughly get about I think this year I had about close to 15 million views. So I more than doubled Phil's totals. And I only have one channel. So that's for comparison's sake. I'm not trying to say I'm a big channel. I'm a small channel. I'm a very small channel. But I managed to pull in 15 million views, and Phil could only muster half of that, which is pretty sad, Phil. And then we compare it to 2022, where he made 8.3 million views for DSP Gaming, and then DSP Rack was a channel, so I'm putting nothing there. I'm putting nothing because even if you look at the old channel, whatever it was called, it was making no views and it was not making any money. There was no money coming in for it, so I'm just going to put NA for that. So Phil managed to pull 8.3 million views in 2022, right? 2022, 8.3 million views. I mean, DSP Gaming took a big hit. I mean, even if you want to say that, you know, there's just no way around it. He essentially got 1 million views less year over year. So he got 1 million views less in 2023 compared to 2022. So, I mean, I get ad revenue. You guys know that. I can kind of figure out roughly what someone makes with about 1 million views a month. If you're pulling in 1 million views a month, roughly, it just depends on your CPM and a few other factors. But generally, we can say it's about $4,000 in ad revenue. And I'm being generous here. I'm being generous with Phil here. I'm just gonna say, okay, it's 4K. It may be about 3,500, roughly about that. So you know, being that Phil managed to lose 1 million views, that equates to ad revenue. I don't care what anyone says. Views don't matter on YouTube. It's it's ads. Yes, but if you have more views, you're gonna have more ads. It's plain and simple. I don't know why Phil doesn't understand that. I know Phil is hard-headed and he isn't a bright guy, but it's, you know, if you're gonna have less eyes on your channel and your content, that means less people are probably gonna catch an ad. They're not watching your shit, they're not watching an ad, so you get less ad revenue. So I'm gonna be even more generous. Let's just say that he only lost $3,000. That's being generous. Let's say that the 1 million views equated to negative $3 million. I mean, $3,000. That's what Phil lost. So let's just say that he lost $3,000 right there. All right. And that's just for the year. So if you break that down by 12 months, you know, Phil lost close to $200 a month in revenue. So right there alone, we're at $21,000. Phil managed to make $21,000 less with a brand new fucking channel. With a brand new channel. It's just ridiculous. Now, people always say, well, why don't you include Patreon? Patreon is very insignificant, and Patreon is pretty consistent. He gets about $300 a month with his Patreons. That's what he gets on average. And most of it is due to that Slayer requesting videos. So he roughly gets about $300, which equates to about $3,600. And that was pretty consistent for 2023 and 2022. So I'm going to call that a wash. So he didn't lose anything there, right? He didn't lose anything on Patreon. Let's just say he managed to pull that. Memberships is a little difficult to quantify because it just shifts every month. But if you take a look at his 2023 numbers to his 2022 numbers, he roughly had about the same volume of members. Nothing really changed. There would be times where he'd hit 700-800 members, but for the most part, he averaged roughly about 450 to 500 members a month. That was his average for the year. So that's going to stay consistent. I'm going to just say that that's a wash. So whatever income Phil earned for his memberships for 2022 compared to it's about the same. So I'm not going to say he took a loss there. Okay. So right there alone, that's his revenue source right there. That's all his revenue right there. So we can estimate. This is a rough estimate, but I think it's a pretty good guess that Phil managed to lose about $21,000 this year. So he made $21,000 less he made $21,000 less in 2023 than he did in 2022. Now that's not to say that the man is broke. No, I'm not saying that at all. But he made less. So if he roughly made about $120,000 a year, $125,000, that was kind of the consistent number that we've heard in previous years. He made less than that. He's close to about 100K this year. 99 to about 95 to 100K. That's what Phil made this year. Now, for most people, that's great. That's a good source of income. But for Phil, you know, with his gambling addictions, with WWE champions, just his alcoholism, the wasteful spending, being that his wife only worked part-time, this is a significant dip in income. And I don't care what you say, this hurts. This will hurt anybody. This would hurt anyone. And I'm not even comparing what he spent in WWE Champions 2022 versus 2023. I mean, that could make this even more significant, of an impact. So when Phil sits here and tells you that he made about the same amount of revenue or didn't lose any money, that's wrong. That's fake news. That's fake news. Just like Donald Trump said, that's fake news. If Donald Trump was listening to Phil, he would say that's fake news. So Phil again lies about everything, and of course he's not going to be open. And I don't expect him to talk about his finances or be open. That's something that you keep to yourself. But when you're a public figure and you expose so much of yourself, and you talk about income, and you make income such a big part of your streams by begging and begging your dents and asking for money, and doing tip audits, then it becomes a part of you, Phil. So I think it's fair game for me to take a look at your money and do an analysis and try to figure out how much you made versus how much you made, how much you made year over year, and question you when you say shit like, oh, I made about the same amount of money. And based on these figures right here, the conclusion is that is a lie. Just like everything in Phil's life. It's probably going to get worse with the third channel, because he's going to put more time, more effort, waste more time, more effort, take away from DSP Gaming. And it's probably going to be worse. And if you look at 2021, it already started bad. 2021, it's already, I think it's close to about 20% in income compared to 2023. So, I mean, you can see he made, like I said, so far for 2021, he's probably made about, he made about $700 in 3 days of streaming. And then you compare that to what he made in 2023. It's roughly about the same. No, it's about the same. It's about $700. He's roughly about the same. So, but of course we know that once we get into January a little bit more, those numbers are going to dip more and more. So I expect a significant drop in income for 2024, and rinse and repeat all over again, folks. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the analysis. Sorry it was long, but I thought it was good to end 2023 and, you know, answer the question whether Phil was being honest and whether he lost or made money, or whether he lost money or roughly made about the same amount. So, and the answer, of course, is no, he did not. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Peace out.